Prime Minister, welcome.
Thank you, David.
Is it still strange to be referred to as Prime Minister?
Well, you're always conscious of the responsibility, and it's something that, frankly, you should never be casual about. It should always be reminding you that there are millions of Australians who rely upon the decisions you make every day, and so that should always be something that keeps you on your toes.
Is there anything in the job that has been unexpected by you that you thought, wow, I didn't realise it would involve all of this?
Mainly on the upside, I've got to say, and that's the surprising way in so many cases. You hear about, people being disaffected with politics and all the rest of it. And I know there's a lot of that, but, just the generosity of Australians who come up to you every day. The best part of the job is I can talk to everybody.
Yep.
At any level, in any place.
And they feel as though they've got to talk to you.
And everybody's happy to have a chat to you. And
Yep.
and the overwhelming conversations I have with Australians are just about quite practical everyday things.
Yep.
And whether it's, I'm down on Shark Park after a game where I enjoy going across to the sheds afterwards, and as I walk back through across the field, the kids are still kicking footies and that sort of thing, and parents come and talk to you, or wherever you happen to be, out in outback Australia, dealing with farmers and communities affected by drought, people will chat to you, and they're the opportunities you've got to take. I mean, yep, everyone likes to take selfies, and that's fine, but I'm actually more keen to lean the ear in a bit and hear what they've got to say.
How have Jenny and the girls coped?
Oh, very well. I mean, at first it was quite a roller coaster for the family. I mean, my girls sort of take things in their stride, and we've always been protective of the family from politics. But as Prime Minister, they understand that the whole family takes this job on. And for Jenny, as time has gone on, I mean, the country's warmed to her incredibly.
Yeah.
And she's
more than you.
I think that's true, and with good cause. And Jen is really finding some areas of real passion for her. And she doesn't do it in a loud way. She goes off to these events here and there very quietly, and she just sort of turns up on her own, and people just are encouraged. And she's really seeing how her coming along and lending her support, or that comforting word, is really encouraging people. My wife is an amazing encourager. Yeah.
And that's really important for her to have a role like that too. What about the girls, though, at school? They're at a really delicate age, aren't they, in terms of pressures and sometimes not wanting to stand out? Well, they do now.
Well, they do, but equally, the school they go to is very supportive, and they've stayed in the same school. We haven't moved them from schools or anything like that, because the school community they're in is very protective of them, and the teaching staff and the leadership of the school. And in fact, the day it occurred, just almost a year ago, the junior school principal called the school together, explained to the kids what was happening to their dad, and said they're no different to any other kids, and they don't want to be, and we're just going to go on life as normal in the school. And that has happened for the last year. So I couldn't be more thankful. Jen and I couldn't be more thankful, not only just the leadership of the school, but the kids at school and the parents. I mean, we were down watching Abby in her first production of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang the other night, and we were
What
there.
role did she have?
She was one of the little lost girls,
right.
And she, I thought she lit up the stage, and it was wonderful. We enjoyed it along with all the other parents, and they're the nice things where you just go along and you just go along as their mum and dad.
Yeah, that is fantastic to see. You got elected, basically almost straight into campaign mode.
True.
And we saw Scott Morrison, the campaigner. What do I do to get elected? That's the whole issue of politics. Now that you're in, you can stop, you can breathe, you can look to the future. What do you want to be known for as a Prime Minister? What's your vision for the country in the next 10 years?
Well, both today and 20 years from now, I want Australians to be in control of their future. Now, the way that occurs is they have a job, that they live in a country where they're respected, that they have access to the services they need that only come from a strong economy, that they can feel safe and secure, both with their kids online or in terms of the bigger threats that Australia faces, whether it's from terrorism. Just yesterday I was down at the Counter-Terrorism Response Group down in Holsworthy. It's about that's what sovereignty is. Sovereignty means you're in control of, and Australians and Australia needs to be in control of its future as much as is humanly possible. And that's what our policy settings are designed to achieve. It doesn't matter whether it's talking about recycling of plastics or national security. One of the things that really encouraged me about the election because I think this was fundamentally what it was about. And that was that Australians wanted to be in control of their own futures, what happens in their own house. Yeah. And if they have that job, then they've got choices and they're not relying on the government. This whole idea of, oh, we're the government, give us all your money and we'll solve all your problems. I mean, no one bought that. Right. And I think that said something.
They want you out of their life, don't they?
They do, and they want to be empowered to make their own choices, do their own things. So, I mean, I want Australians to be empowered. Yeah. And all of these things you do in government does that. Yeah. And when they're in control of their own lives, then there's a big smile on my face.
Yeah, okay. So do you want to be known for one big issue, though? Sort of jobs. We've heard about jobs for years and years, jobs, yeah. And that's fair enough. It's great. But you know, big picture stuff, like we all remember back to the Snowy scheme or solving a massive issue that no one's tackled before.
Well, we're doing all of those things. And we've got Snowy 2.0 that we're building. We're rolling out the jobs and we're doing all of that. But, you know, I'm not into the vanities of politics. Yeah. I mean, the real challenge of government is doing it every day and doing it against a set of values and beliefs that you believe are absolutely critical to the country's future. So you do all of those things. You create 1.3 million jobs. You see hundreds of thousands of new businesses created. You see 42,000 people come off Newstart and actually get into a tax-paying job. That's happened in the last 12 months. You see record levels of youth employment achieved in just 1 year. I mean, they're all great things, and they're all things we want to keep doing. But at the end of the day, it's doing all of those every day because Australians just want government to be stable, to deliver on the services that they rely on. And I know how we need to do that. You've got to have a strong economy and you've got to have a budget that is well managed. And you put those two things together, and when they succeed, well, that's when I cheer.
What keeps you awake at night?
This is going to be one of the most difficult periods in which to manage our relationships with some of the biggest powers in the world. And Australia is living in a part of the world which is the focus of all of this. And it's a product partly of great success in the post-war period. I mean, I gave a speech a little while back, and it all came to me when I was actually sitting in Portsmouth. This was the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And I'm sitting at a lunch with the leaders of all the countries. The President was there, the Prime Minister of Great Britain was there, and I was sitting next to Angela Merkel. And that was quite profound, to think here we were 75 years later and we're all sitting in a room together, countries and nations that had been arch enemies, and it just showed, I think, the triumph of human endeavour. Not long before that, I had stood with Prime Minister Abe in Darwin and we laid a wreath together in total silence. And I thought of the conflict, I thought of the bombs falling on Darwin, and here we were as two nations, the best of friends. And that filled me with a lot of optimism. And it said, yeah, we've got big challenges now, but I think one of the most endearing things about Australia and Australians, and I notice this wherever I go in the world, I'm sure you do too, we're an optimistic people. We're not a defeatist people. We're not a whinging people. We actually just deal with problems as they come and always believe we can make it better. And, you know, there's plenty of things to get down about. There's no doubt about that. But dealing with these challenges at present, yeah, we're aware of them. Yeah. We're very conscious of them. You know, there's no flashing light that needs to go off at the moment for me to understand some of these pressures. But equally so, I'm not diminished in any confidence about how that we can overcome them all and make it all work.
So you've got your biggest customer feuding with your biggest friend, and you're having to tread the fine line between both of them without offending them. Yeah. Well, how do you do that with the Chinese? Like, if they decide to get narky with us, we go into depression. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Well, first of all, I think it's acknowledging, and I've been at pains to do this, that yes, they are a customer, but they're more than a customer, way more. That's where I think a lot of the relationships started, but we now have a comprehensive strategic partnership with China, which is way bigger than that. The people-to-people relationships, for example. I mean, you're involved, I know, in the AFL initiative. And those connections that we see between Australia and China today are stronger. And that's outside of government. That's just people getting on with each other. There's 1.2 million Australians of ethnic Chinese heritage in Australia. I mean, today we celebrate Chinese New Year, not as some niche ethnic get-together. Australians all go out and enjoy that. So I think acknowledging that there's been a gear change in the type of relationship we have with China, that's important. And because that puts greater ballast in the relationship. It's not just about the dollars, that we actually want to make this work. Equally, we've got to be very clear that as a country, we welcome China's growth. I mean, why would we want to contain China's growth? I mean, that'd be a bit of a numpty of a thing to do, I would have thought. And so we welcome that. Now, that said...
But Trump does.
Well, look, there are different issues. I mean, this is the point I was coming to. China's growth has taken it to a point now where I thought that was the point of engaging with China, that they would get to a level of maturity with their economy and bring millions, hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, which they've done. It's the biggest economic miracle we've seen in our lifetime. But that now needs to go into a new phase. And that is, having accomplished that, having achieved that critical mass of economic performance, the rules that apply to all of us, the United States, got to apply it in China as well. And the rules-based order, where it comes to how technology is handled, how partnerships are formed, how payments are made, how the rules apply, how you reduce emissions, for example. I mean, we should all be subject to the same rules now. And that's what a lot of this debate's about. The tensions are actually a product of the fact that the plan we've had up to date has been so successful. So we've got to establish a new set of rules to take us through this next period.
Are they listening?
I believe they both are, but they're both wrestling with this massive change. There can be no doubt that the economic rise of China has had profound implications for processing and manufacturing in the United States. I mean, it's hard.
It's sort of Americans outsourcing their manufacturing to China for commercial reasons.
This all happened, and that has produced, some big disruptions.
Yeah.
And I think both economies and both countries are now coming to terms with those changes and trying to decide, well, how do we work this from here? And the United States makes some very legitimate points about the nature of trading relationships, and so we just engage with both.
You're confident they'll sort it out?
Look, I don't think it's going to happen quick. I was more confident going into the G20 meeting in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and they did make quite a bit of progress there, but things really fell back after that. There was an attempt to bring that back forward in Osaka, but we've seen what's happened since then. So I think we're going to have to get used to this for a while, this level of tension. Okay. And we've just got to accommodate that. We've got to absorb it. We've got to see the opportunities in it, which there are many, and we have to maintain the relationships that we have.
And we still keep chalking out record surpluses, so that's great. So you're dealing with those two superpowers, but then you're also dealing in the Pacific region, where our neighbours in the Pacific are seeing us comparatively as sort of the superpower here and wanting us to do better in terms of emissions and some of our climate decisions.
Well, not just, the Southwest
and
Pacific.
recognise what's happening.
I think one of the key balancing factors into what we were just talking about with China and the United States is our relationships with all the Indo-Pacific nations. So our relationship with India, our relationship with Japan, Indonesia most significantly, and even smaller nations like Singapore, where our vision is for an independent, sovereign Indo-Pacific. We all just want to be ourselves as countries and not basically be told to do by anybody. And that doesn't matter whether you're living in Vietnam or you're living in Australia. And Vietnam is going to be an important relationship for us into the future. I'll be there in a few weeks' time. But turning this to the Pacific, while we've always been there in terms of our development assistance program, and we have been the dominant provider of support to the Pacific, bar none in the world, and that remains true today. Around $1.5 billion we invest every year. It's daylight second, third, fourth. But what I think has been lacking, and what the step up is about talking about this as a family partnership, not as some sort of, I will help you out type relationship, and understanding they have particular challenges that they need to address. And today we're making that announcement about continuing our investment in what I'd call a changing climate resilience or climate change resilience. It's about building roads. It's about building bridges. It's about engineering works, which
and
actually...
Doing it before the Chinese...
Well, it's about doing it. Well,
it's
just about doing it. See, the Pacific has long understood our deep familial connection, and we've always been their partner of preference and choice. And we just need to keep stepping up to that. And we will, and we're trusted in doing that. But it's happening at a much more significant level, at a leader level. Now, I mean, I engaged in the first bilateral visit to Fiji as a Prime Minister to Prime Minister visit. That actually surprised me at the time when someone mentioned it to me. It's not the first time a Prime Minister has been in Fiji. I suspect most Prime Ministers have spent the odd vacation or something there. But for that, the same was true in Vanuatu. So reaching out and putting a leader-level prominence to this, I think, is very important because it's seen as a relationship of peers and partners.
Closer to home, why your passion for recycling?
Because I think it promises being broken to just normal people. And what I mean by that is we've been told for years, put that plastic bottle in that bin and somehow through the magic of what happens on the other side, it'll be reused in some positive way. Well, the truth is overall, only 12% of plastics are recycled in this country and only 21% of the ones you put in that bin are recycled. Now, I feel a bit ripped off about that. I mean, this isn't some warrior statement or anything like that. We don't have to go and wear armbands and all that sort of stuff. It's just, if you put it in there, that's what you think it should be done. And if it's not happening, well, people should be honest about that. Now, one of the reasons that's happening is they'll put it in containers and they'll ship it up to, Southeast Asian nations. Or it'll go in a landfill. Well, no. These things need to be reused and recycled. But as you'd know, for that...
But it's a big investment. It's a big issue. It's more than $20 million for good ideas. It is a billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Well, you've got to create... You've got to create that circular economy. You've got to create the economy which actually makes this thing work on its own. So let's talk about plastic bags and plastic recyclables and
they're hard to
bitumen,
recycle.
and bitumen. Okay. Yeah. Now I was out at the Downer plant this morning, which basically takes that and converts it into asphalt.
Yep.
Now, all governments are the biggest clients of people who lay down asphalt. So if we were to look at introducing controls into our procurement practices, which ensured that that's the asphalt we wanted to use, well, you're creating an economy for increased investment in that capability. At the moment, I think there are some real missing links in the circular economy. And it's not just about government investing. It only works if the private sector invests and sees a quid in this, and then they will, and then it builds its own critical mass. We don't have scalability currently in these big recycling engines. There's great science, there's great research, we're going to invest more in that, we're going to set up collaboration. But the state governments are going to come on board too. I mean, I signed them up last Friday to banning the export of what we're talking about as plastics and glass and paper, because that all ends up in waterways and in oceans. So that needs to be banned. But we then need a plan to, okay, you ban that, how are you going to make sure it's not going to end up in landfill? And that's reused.
And retailers sell our recycled plastic rather than someone else's from overseas because it's cheaper.
Well, that, and we've got a role too, consumers. We've got to express our interest. Now, I don't want to mandate what people have to buy and do all that sort of thing. That's sort of not my instinct. But I just think it's sort of common sense. You make the economy for recycling, then you make recycling a reality. But if you just sort of go, oh, there's this bin, and if you put it in there, it's the problems the world has solved, which is what a lot of us were sold.
Exactly right.
And we were sold a pup.
Yeah.
So
you're annoyed. Jenny was annoyed.
Yeah.
So good.
we're going to get it sorted.
Getting something done on it, which is fabulous. Economy in good shape. Any bumps on the horizon there? Can we all sleep at night?
I think the stability of returning to policy settings around the economy, whether that's on housing, which there were a lot, and we've seen, I think, a rebound, not a big bounce, and we're not looking for a big bounce in that. We're looking for a stable housing market. That has a big influence on confidence, I think, and we're seeing improvements there in the eastern states' housing markets. But the things we've got to keep doing in the economy is we've got to keep opening up these trading relationships. We've taken the share of our trade, which is covered by our agreements, from less than 30% to 70%. And it's going to go to 90%. It's about investing in the skills of people into the future. I'm very frustrated at the way our vocational education and training systems work in the country, and I've got to say I think the states are equally frustrated. We had a good discussion about that. Basically, employers want to know that the person who's being trained has skills that they need in their business, and the person being trained wants to be confident of the same thing. And I don't think that's happening enough at the moment, and you've got to strip away a bit of congestion busting on the bureaucratic infrastructure around training. Training is about the people getting trained and the businesses they need them. It's actually not about the trainers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also understanding where the jobs are going to be.
Exactly.
65% of the kids in your daughter's primary school class will get a job that hasn't been invented yet.
Absolutely.
And that's the exciting thing.
Yeah. The same was true when we grew up too.
Yeah.
And so, cybersecurity, for example, that's a growing need.
Yep.
And that's just not at a very high end. It can be just at a technical education level. Yep. And there are so many more of these jobs. I mean, making sure our economy, and I know you've been very big on this on small business, that they embrace the digitisation of the economy. Yep. I mean, the biggest change I could see for small businesses, one I want to see realised, and that is that they go to real-time payments with large businesses. So, I mean, we've already taken the payment cycle down from 30 days to 20 days as a government, and we've encouraged state governments to do the same. But frankly, if small businesses are digitised through their accounting systems and their payment systems, and it's all being done, which you can do through your mobile phone number now, through the new payments platform, you can go to and expect real-time payment. I mean, imagine that is a huge velocity of money that then goes into the economy, which creates jobs, frees up cash flow for small business, and removes one big headache of paperwork of people having to spend all their time sitting out filling out forms.
All right, enough of the big picture. Back to you. How do you balance being a dad and Prime Minister? Are there some rituals you've put into place to make sure you can still get that balance?
Yeah, we do. And one is, Sundays we try and make always family days. I mean, we go off to church together and we, have lunch together, and we try and spend that day always together. And if something happens on a Sunday, then we make sure we make up for it on a Saturday. We watch the family movie nights. We do all that with the girls. What's yours? Yours is the favourite Sound of Music, isn't it? It's not. We're a bit of a fan of that too.
Yeah. Oh, good.
But we'll find whatever it is, and we'll sit down and watch a movie together. And I took up, and we do our curry nights, which I do with much enthusiasm. And Lily,
have you got a signature dish?
Oh, no, there are too many. They always like me to make butter chicken, but Bangalore chicken, that's not a bad one, and I don't do a bad korma either. They've even had a vindaloo of mine. We don't do that too often, but when they got particularly adventurous, so we do that. And keeping healthy is important for us. And I took up just lap swimming about almost a year ago, and my daughter likes to swim too, so we'll just go down to the pool together. And
so, how do you switch off?
By doing that, actually.
By swimming.
Because you can't have your phone in the pool. No one can interrupt you when you're in the pool, unless you're sharing a lane and you bump into one another, and that happens sometimes. But it's a good way just to disconnect and do that. But it's family time is my way of doing it. I mean, my family is where I retreat to.
When you go out and about, do you have a common question you ask people their views on?
I got a few, but I had a suggestion many years ago. Bruce Bilson used to be the member for Dunkley, and he was Minister for Business and a number of other things. But Bruce used to do this thing with his constituents, say, "Okay, you're Prime Minister for a day. What are you going to do?" And that's the same thing the kids get asked to do projects on. I often do that, and you get a range of responses. I was just yesterday reading through a whole bunch of letters that I was getting from kids, and it's one of the other things we do in the office is, people put, if you write letters to the Prime Minister, I obviously can't read physically all of them because there are thousands of them, but we do look at them, and I ask to see them, and the ones from kids are great. I mean, particularly when they do pictures.
What's the best question from a kid you've been asked?
Oh, well, the ones that has really prompted me lately is about what we're doing on recycling. I mean, the kids are talking a lot about what's happening in the oceans, and that doesn't surprise me. I grew up by the beach, and down in the Shire, we've lived now for many years. We're pretty much a coastal population. The vast majority of Australians live near the sea or very close to it. So I think we're very conscious of those ocean environmental issues, those blue environment issues, whether it's what happens with mangroves or what's happening with the water quality. I mean, when I was a kid, you'd go swimming those days. That was before the ocean outfalls, and you just didn't look for the surf report. There was another very important report.
Exactly right.
We won't go into what it was.
No, exactly.
Sometimes it was self-evident, and the report wasn't necessary.
Just quickly, will the Sharkies make the finals?
I believe so. Yeah, I do. I do.
Prime Minister
Yeah,
request.
but you know, they've last weekend was a bit of a disappointment. But they've got the players to win the comp.
Yep.
But you know, a bit more application over the next few weeks, and they'll be in finals footy.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, David.